Welcome, everybody, to our monthly office hours. We have a rather jam-packed agenda today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gail Hoagland. I am an OSC compliance liaison, and welcome to all of you. We're going to be doing a number of critical updates today around compliance, around monitoring and compliance with KPMG. Tammy has lots of reporting updates. And of course, as always, we have website updates and time for questions and answers. So let's get going. We have been working with the state architect's office to work on a number of incorporating requirements of SLFRF into all contracts and agreements. And I know a number of agencies are soon starting capital construction and controlled maintenance. So when you contact the state architect's office, please make sure that you are using their agreements because they will be SLFRF compliance, in compliance. The reference guide that we have spoken about is now available, and it really summarizes guidance on SLFRF, OMB uniform guidance requirements, and provides a basic overview of ARPA and SLFRF. Please keep in mind, our objective is full compliance with all programmatic, fiscal, and reporting requirements. So I hope you find the reference guide helpful and use it as a resource that you go to frequently. Just a reminder, and we said this before and probably will say it again, the use of POs with SLFRF funds is not allowed unless you receive an exception from OSC to use a PO. And there's really rare exceptions to that rule. An example of something that has been approved so far is allowances for a situation in which a state price agreement task order was in place. And to be able to get that negotiated rate, a PO needed to be used. So the PO was approved but in addition to the PO, a letter with specific SLFRF requirements was included, and signatures were obtained via DocuSign. So there may be some additional things that you will have to add in, but please make sure that you do get an approved exception prior to using your PO. Some recent changes to the grant agreements. Of course, the DUNS is no longer being used by the federal government. So that was replaced with unique entity identifier. It's much easier to say UEI. And a number of other changes. We always encourage you to check the website and use the most recent versions of grant agreements that are posted. And we also have a crosswalk of all the changes that you can find at the link provided. Some changes that have been made include HIPAA, BAA, etc. So, Ron, could you talk to us a little bit about those changes?
Absolutely. So with the Attorney General's office and with some state statutes that have been passed here recently, we've got the HIPAA BAA and we've got the Personal Identifiable Information Certification. There's a lot of syllables there. So HIPAA, it was enacted in 1996, and prior to HIPAA, people could sell your personal health information for a profit, and all of a sudden you'd be getting solicitations from drug companies that sold the drug that would help you with your maladies. So the federal government decided that that probably wasn't a good idea and that we should protect that. So they passed HIPAA. PHI is essential to HIPAA. You get the protected health information. And then you also have entities that are covered by HIPAA, such as health plans, healthcare providers, healthcare clearinghouses, and business associates. One of the things that the Attorney General's office wanted to stress with all of our agreements is we wanted to make sure that the HIPAA BAA agreement or the exhibit was at the top of the list for exhibits as far as the order of precedence, and that we were going to put it in the document or put it in the templates with the ability to take it out if no PHI was going to be used, rather than say add it if there is PHI. So much less likely that we're going to miss anything now, because the HIPAA BAA is attached to all of the OSC approved templates. Questions about HIPAA BAA? We're just trying to make sure that we protect people's health information. I've got a couple of examples. Actually, I had one today that, let's see, who can I put on the spot here? Stacy, I'm going to put you on the spot since you invited me to the party. So today on my work line, I got a message from Kaiser Permanente, and it said, we're calling Leon to let you know that your annual appointment is due, and we'd like to schedule it for you. So do you think that Kaiser violated HIPAA by calling and leaving that message on my phone? No, yes? Probably not, because you couldn't really tell. They just left the first name. His name is Leon. We don't know who he is. We don't know why he's going into the doctor's office, if it's strictly a annual visit or if it's something very specific, like a specialist or something. So probably not. I thought it was kind of funny that I got that call this morning, knowing that I was going to talk about HIPAA this afternoon. So let's talk about a couple of different situations, a couple of different examples of how HIPAA BAA would or would not be needed with a grant agreement. So if we have a grant that we are going to give to a healthcare provider, let's say they're going to do counseling services in like a rural area, do you think that we would need to have a HIPAA BAA agreement or exhibit on that grant agreement? If you're shy and want to throw it in the chat, you can do that too. I would say yes, we absolutely need to go ahead and make sure that we have a HIPAA exhibit with the BAA attached to that grant. Next, we've got an example of, let's say we give a grant to a company that analyzes anonymized PHI to create a report to show what healthcare services are provided in a certain geographic area. Do you think that we would need to go ahead and put a HIPAA exhibit on that grant agreement? The answer to that one would be no, because we're anonymizing the data. So just a couple of examples of what we would need to either add or not add on a HIPAA exhibit and keep it on the grant agreement. Next, we'll talk about PII. We've added a little bit to the definition of PII at the AG's request, as well as some language that protects PII. It puts some more protections and another requirement on contractors or grantees that might be getting personal identifiable information. So the genesis of this comes from an immigration bill. And what we're trying to do is make sure that the federal government can't go to contractors and pressure them into providing PII of regarding their workers that might be at risk for deportation. So we want to make sure that we're protecting the folks that we contract with and the workers of the contractors. So that's why it was added. There is an exhibit that's added, and I've received this question already once today. What's the difference between the two exhibits? So each year we want the contractor to sign a certification that they are going to go ahead and keep the PII confidential, and they're not going to provide it to anybody that they shouldn't provide it to. And one is for an entity. So if it's Acme Incorporated, you'd use the entity PII certification form. If it's with an individual, if it's with Bill Smith and he's providing it, then you would use the individual form, and then he would go ahead and sign that. And those are required to be signed each year, so that they agree each year that they are going to go ahead and make sure that they're not sharing PII. Any questions, comments, thoughts? And that's the number where Kaiser Permanente leaves me messages for Leon.
Now, the interagency agreements between two state agencies, those do not contain those, correct?
Correct. Yeah,
They
we're all the same entity. Still
Right.
need to make sure we protect PII, but we're all the same entity, the same state.
Anybody have other questions for Ron?
And certainly if you think of some later on, go ahead and send me an email. Give me a call. Email is probably easier. So by all means, reach out to me if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer them for you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you.
So, first off, thank you to all agencies for submitting your risk assessments on time. We know it was a really, really heavy lift, so we appreciate all your hard work. Stacy is going to talk about the next steps around the KPMG engagement.
Thank you, Gail. Yes, so first off, I also want to thank all the recovery officers and department point of contacts and everyone within the departments who helped to gather information and gather the requested documents. So we know you're busy, and we know this was just one more additional thing that was asked of you, but we really appreciate it. It really sets the stage for everything else that's going to be happening moving forward with the KPMG engagement. So, you know, Gail said everybody submitted their questionnaires on time, and their documents were submitted to KPMG. We're following up with a handful of agencies on some of the documents that were submitted. And that's going to be happening over the next probably week to 2 weeks. Either someone from my team, Gail, Ernie, or Allie, will be following up with the departments, or on rare occasion, somebody from KPMG may follow up with you as well if they've got questions about the documents. We're also going to be setting up some quick and dirty informal meetings with the departments probably the last week of June to just, after KPMG has had an opportunity to look at all the documents that were submitted and just give the agencies an opportunity to clarify any questions that KPMG may have after their initial run through their document review. It's going to be really important for us to have those quick meetings and get clarification on any questions before KPMG kind of finalizes the actual risk assessment scores. And the risk assessment scores are going to be taken. It's not only the survey that was completed, but it's also the documents that they're reviewing will all be utilized to come up with that risk assessment score for each one of the departments. So each department gets their own risk assessment score, and we'll get a risk profile. And then we're going to have meetings towards mid to late July with departments and the ROs and point of contacts with KPMG to discuss the results of those risk assessment findings, and really kind of give preliminary recommendations on things that they're seeing, trends that they've identified. So look for those meetings in mid-July. And then after that happens, KPMG will then undertake the next major deliverable, which will be the development of individual department monitoring plans. And those are going to be based off of the results of the risk assessment. So departments will either be rated high, medium, or low risk, and then the monitoring plans will be tailored accordingly. So that's why we put such a heavy importance on completing those risk assessment questionnaires and getting the documents in, because it really drives everything moving forward. The monitoring plans will be shared with all the departments before the actual monitoring takes place, and we'll discuss all of those, have meetings with the departments and KPMG to really outline what the next steps are going to be in the actual monitoring of the expenditures and how that's going to look and what the sampling size is going to be and all of the details. But the risk assessment piece was really the first big deliverable, and really, like I said, sets the stage for moving forward. So the other thing I wanted to remind everybody is, even though we're doing this engagement where we're looking at departments' level of risk and looking at departments' processes and procedures and doing some monitoring, it does not relieve you as an agency, as a department, and as a program does not relieve you from your responsibility under 2 CFR 200 to monitor your subrecipients. So this entire engagement with KPMG is really, an exercise in audit preparedness. We're trying to get ready for when the OIG comes to audit the state of Colorado on SLFRF. So everything we're doing now over the next 2 or 3 years is in preparation for that. But that still does not mean that you do not have to monitor your own subrecipients. It's still your responsibility as a recipient of federal funds to monitor your subrecipients. So I know we say this at every meeting and every opportunity, every office hours, but it's important that departments understand that. If you need help with your monitoring of your subrecipients, please reach out to me. We can talk about next steps, potentially doing some additional work with KPMG to help out with that. So just shoot me an email if you need any additional help or would like to at least start that conversation. Be happy to have that conversation with you. I think that's it, Gail, for my KPMG update.
Thanks, Stacy.
You're welcome.
Well, I know that Tammy has lots of important reporting updates. So Tammy, take it away.
Thanks, Gail. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Tammy Nelson, and I am heading up the reporting side of the efforts. The first update I have is regarding the gravity system. We have been talking about, as we've moved along, moving from you all submitting spreadsheets to us for quarterly reporting to a system. That system is Gravity, and we're going to be up and rolling for this next reporting cycle. Currently, users are being set up in the system. One person per reporting entity is going to be given a license if they have SLFRF activity. For example, whoever we normally interact with, that's the level we're going to give a license. For example, the governor's offices, there have several distinct separate offices. They would get a license per office, but in most cases, it will be one per department. For this reporting cycle, we know that we probably have people that will have SLFRF, but will not have it for the July cycle. Depending on where we end up with a number of licenses, we may delay issuing the Gravity ID if you don't need that for this reporting cycle. Just depending on numbers, we probably will need to get some more licenses before we wrap up, but that's our plan for the time being. So when you get that email that you have been set up in Gravity, you'll want to go ahead and log in. There is Gravity navigation training. The messages already went out for that. People are signing up. So if you're going to be the user, you'll want to attend one of those sessions. There's 6 of them between June 21st and June 30th. And these are going to be interactive. You'll be signing on, logging in along with the Gravity trainers. So those are going to be smaller sessions, 10 people per session. So that will be happening. If you have not gotten the communication or have not responded, and you think you need user access to Gravity, please email the SLFRF reporting mailbox. We're reaching out, but just in case we've missed anybody, feel free to contact us. And both the financial templates and then the quarterly metrics that are required for the quarterly report will be uploaded into the Gravity system by agencies and institutions this cycle and going forward, rather than that happening via email. And so for the financial templates, the information that we are asking for has not changed at all. But what we did do is we did combine the subaward tab and the expenditure tab of the financial activity template. There seemed to be a lot of confusion, and I completely see why. In having 2 templates, that's just how we slice and dice when we're uploading it to the US Treasury, but that doesn't necessarily make sense for you all in giving us the information. So that is one enhancement we made. And then the performance template, we've done a couple of different things to you all. The first 2 cycles, we had individual templates per groups of ECs. The first cycle, then the second cycle, we gave you the entire workbook and everything that is possibly could be asked, regardless of where it was coming from. In the second cycle, we have somewhat of a scaled down version of the last quarter. It's going to be one template, the same template that everybody will get, and narrowed down on one sheet to the things that we need for quarterly reporting only. So those are some changes you'll see, but substantively, a little bit different look and feel, but substantively not different than what you have been doing for us. And I see a chat about the mailbox address, and I think we probably have it at the end of the slide deck. Yes, it is SOC_SLFRF_mailbox@state.co.us. Sometimes people will think OSC for the beginning digits rather than SOC, but Amy, that is the correct mailbox. And then the upcoming due dates for the financial information, that template is due in Gravity by July 8th, and the performance data is due by July 18th. And then in terms of how we plan to help get you all ready for this cycle, a lot of you have been through some of it. I mean, a lot of you have been through it. More of you will probably start going through it as you start spending money. We are going to develop a reporting user guide, which will go through the templates I just talked about, as well as also some additional written documentation about Gravity itself in that guide. So our target is to get that out and available to you all on June 24th. We are also going to be sending out very soon time slots for training. So what we're going to do this cycle is to do individual department training. What we found last cycle was we did a kind of a group training with updates, but kind of depending on where people were at in the process, we did a lot of individual follow-up. So we thought a customized approach would work better. So we will be scheduling the last week of June and the first week of July, have time slots available for that training. We're going to go over the new consolidated financial template, the performance template. We'll also cover some key reminders, tips and tricks for what we've seen in past submissions that can help you be more successful this session or just avoid issues. So look for those coming. And then there is also a reminder that all the past sessions, training sessions we have done are out there on our website at the website there. Are there, well, I guess I will wait and ask. I'll wait to ask for questions. So I did also want to talk about the projects that were funded in the 22 legislative session before I finish my update. So in terms of what that is going to look like for you, as the legislation is signed, the recovery officers are preparing an eligibility document that goes over, the project name, the scope of work, information that we need to report kind of at a project level. They're going to submit that, and the department, the governor's office, and the OSC will meet and go over that document and determine what the expenditure category should be. That's kind of one of the primary things that drives the setup of that, the budget and the appropriations. Once the approval of that eligibility document by those parties is finished, the reporting team will sign a project ID. And then once that project ID is assigned, we'll communicate that to the departments. One thing I did want to mention is that the project IDs, they need to be, and that means the appropriation unit that goes with the project ID, they have to be unique per legislative session. So if you have a bill last session that funded a program, and this year you got additional money in a different bill for the same program, we are setting those up as new project IDs and new appropriation units, calling them additional funding. So be aware of that we are not commingling any of the sources of those allocations. We're keeping those distinct. And that was a decision that the governor's office and our office made within the last couple of weeks. And then I also wanted to mention, once you get your new project ID, you will need to initiate an ITI and an ITA with the governor's office to request that they transfer you those funds. So they are the owners of the categorical funds. So they'll have to actually transfer you the cash. Keep in mind that those transfers, these are the SLFRF transfers, there is a very specific event type setup in core to make those transfers. So just be mindful that when you're doing that you're using those particular codes. And then the last thing I wanted to cover is the way these funds are appropriated can be a bit confusing. So all of the federal money, the $3.8 billion, was put into 6 different categorical cash funds, like the behavioral and mental health cash fund, the housing cash fund, there's an economic resiliency cash fund. So there is 6 of those cash funds. And then when the legislature appropriated, they appropriated out of those cash funds as cash appropriations. I want to mention that just because the federal money is in a cash fund, it doesn't make it cash. It's still federal. It retains its federal character, and it will need to be recorded in federal appropriation units within the cash fund. And then all of the federal parameters and compliance requirements would follow follow that federal appropriation. So I just wanted to highlight that. That's a nuance that can be unique to understand, because generally whatever it says in the long bill, that's what it is. But in this case, it's not, because they put federal in a cash fund. So with it now, I'll ask if there are any questions on these reporting updates. All right, you'll be hearing a lot more from my group here in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. As always, we really want to stress there is always something new on the ARPA website. A number of new items have been posted to the website recently, including some of the things that we have talked about. Minor updates to the grant agreements, FAQs for the 2 CFR 200 and capital expenditure trainings, and a reminder that 2 CFR 200 micro trainings are now posted as well. So always check our website, because you never know what wonderful little nugget you're going to find. Check it frequently, about once a week. We do a number of things. Yes, the website link is actually right here that you see, and also our FAQ documents. And as Tammy mentioned earlier, all SLFRF questions can be sent to the SLFRF mailbox. We are happy to respond. And thank you, Kevin, for putting it into the chat. Also, a reminder, there are a ton of federal resources for you, which includes the Treasury SLFRF website, the Treasury Compliance and Reporting Guidelines, and we encourage you, to be familiar with those and use them as a resource. So it's our favorite time of our office hours, where you guys get to ask any kind of question you want, and we will answer your questions. So don't be shy, jump right in.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I have a question regarding the training next week for gravity. I was wondering whether we would have the opportunity to invite additional guests to the training, but it sounds now that there's going to be a limit as to the people, the attendees that can go ahead and take part in this. So then my next question would be, will these be recorded so that we can share them with our teams?
So we are planning on doing a recording. I don't know if it'll be of the particular session that you'll be in, but we will have a recording of at least one of the training sessions. And yes, the number of slots is limited. So I would prefer that people did not invite others, because we may run out of room.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Perfect. The recording should work. Just want to make sure that we can share that with our teams, just so that they're familiar with what we're looking at as well, even though, they won't be the users, but again,
it can be helpful to see what the end result is.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Other questions?
This is Beulah. This is kind of a specific to local affairs question. We have some SLFRF funds that are going to be refinanced with general fund. I can understand reducing what's out there in SLFRF, but I don't quite know what that full entry is going to look like or exactly how we carry that out. Could somebody give us some guidance on that?
Tammy?
Yeah, certainly, Beulah, we'll work with you one-on-one on that, because we'll need to involve the governor's office as well.
Okay.
There's a number of things that have to happen in order to make those transfers.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Any other questions? This is a quiet group today. Okay. Well, keep in mind, you can always contact us. If you're at all like me, sometimes after you leave a meeting, you think of a really important question that you should have asked but didn't ask. So feel free to reach out. Here's our contact information for the compliance liaisons and a list of which agencies are primary to one of the liaisons and who's the backup. And this is always handy to have, because if somebody is out, but you have a burning question you need an immediate answer to, don't hesitate to contact the backup. We're always here for you. That's what we're about. So we will hang around for a little bit just in case there are some questions that pop up. But a reminder that our next meeting will be July 21st at 3 p.m. and we hope to see y'all there. In the meantime, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.